Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I read Twilight for the first time since I was probably like 15. And you know, when I was considering rereading Twilight, I still had the copies that I had when I was a teenager. I was thinking, but what about all of these other books I haven't read yet? There's so many great books out there, tons of great books on my shelf that I haven't read yet. But then I figured those books will always be there. The Twilight Renaissance is right now. I think there might be a couple people out there who subscribed to me when I was reading the Dune books that are going to unsubscribe now, So when I was in middle school into early high school, I was very into Twilight. I remember very distinctly being in the 6th grade and one of my friends loaned me their copy and said, "They're making a movie of this. It's so great. You have to read it." And I remember obsessing over the casting choices before the movie came out, and I remember going to all of the midnight premieres. I'm sure in that period of my life I was rereading the whole series over and over and over again. But this will be the first time that I've looked at this series with adult eyes. Obviously my perspective is going to be very different on it now. But I have to admit, you know, everybody makes fun of Twilight. It's easy to make fun of Twilight, but I had a lot of fun reading them again. There's nostalgia involved. There's a lot of funny things about these books, and it's just kind of light reading where there's not a lot of depth. I'm not learning a lot or being like emotionally moved, and that's okay. I think pure entertainment is okay, and these books were really popular for young people at that age that I was. And I think Twilight led to reading a lot more for a lot of people. You know, I mean, the same people who read Twilight read like The Hunger Games. I am not going to be convinced that Twilight was a net negative. I think it certainly has cultural value. And I like the Twilight movies. I still have a lot of fun with the Twilight movies, so it felt very natural to try to read the books again. So obviously the series was very popular with teenage girls, and as a result very unpopular with boys and adult men for some reason. The first book follows the romance of Bella, the human, moving to a new town, and Edward, the 100-year-old vampire. I think we all know the premise at this point. So let's talk about Bella, the 17-year-old protagonist who is very dumb. So Bella is obviously sort of the teenage girl's lens into the story. There are some traits about her that I was baffled by on this reading, things that I didn't think about much when I was a teenager. First off, there is this kind of reminiscent of fan fiction thing that Bella does where everyone likes Bella, all the boys at school have a crush on Bella, but Bella herself is like irritatingly modest and like is so oblivious that people think she's cute. So Bella in her own head is constantly remarking on how unremarkable she is, but we see evidence that that clearly is not the case from all of the boys around her. So she is like a little bit unreliable. And then the thing that really hit me as an adult reading this is that Bella has an insane amount of independence, like recklessly negligent amount of independence for a 17-year-old. First off, just the idea of her deciding to move to Forks, deciding to not live with her mother anymore, who she's lived with her entire life. Like, her parents act as if they have no say in this at all, and it's all just Bella's decision, which I don't know if it should be. And then her life in Forks, especially in the first book, Charlie is absent, he's working for so much of it, and Bella's like going to the grocery store and buying food and like doing everything completely independently as if she would be living alone. But that is contrasted by her really being a 17-year-old and acting like a 17-year-old. Like some of the teenage human characters, like Jess especially, get a lot of flack for acting like kids, but they are kids. And Bella is too. And Bella is talking to these other teenage girls about liking Edward, basically. She is a child, and no amount of this mature for her age discourse makes her not a child. And that I really did not see when I was also a child, which is really telling and kind of sinister about how relationships with these power dynamics happen to young people, is that when you're a young person, you don't think you're that young. But it does feel like there's a lot of effort in this book to try to like age Bella up, especially with her parents. Renee and Charlie are both very much infantilized by Bella. She takes care of them. She makes all the big decisions. She's the adult. She's feeding Charlie and cleaning his house. And it's like her parents are these little completely passive children. But again, none of that makes her not 17. So then, Edward. Edward is a creep. Now really, like, I say this with love. I loved these books when I was young. I have fondness for the series. If you want to argue that point, please go back and read the book again as an adult. Edward is a creep. He is a predator in every sense of the word. The dude is like 100 years old. Why does he want to date a 17-year-old anyways? Have you ever been around a 17-year-old? And even if they didn't have this age dynamic, there's also just the obvious power dynamic between Bella being a human who literally can't even think when Edward around. She's so like intoxicated by him. And then Edward with all of these years of accumulated knowledge and power over her in every single sense. Like him like falling so hard in love with her does not make sense when she is so dazed around him that she can barely speak. Like why does he like that? Why does he want to be with someone who is intoxicated just by his presence? Like that's weird. So yeah, there's like a ton of red flags here. As an adult, if I were witnessing the situation in the real world, I would like want to tell Bella's father that something weird is happening. Which is also why it's so frustrating reading it now when Bella gets angry at Billy for trying to protect her. Like, this is not good, Bella. Of course he wants to protect you. He should have told Charlie. Anyways, another kind of like weird red flag thing about Edward are his mood swings. He is actually much more annoying than I remember. All of the mood swings and the drama, like he's the adult here, but he acts like a child in so many ways. And he's always getting like angry at Bella and snapping and then 2 seconds later laughing and then being angry again. Like it's very whiplashy. And you'd think after 100 years he would be better at controlling his emotions. Like Edward has rage issues, which through like a teenage lens is kind of, I don't know, I feel like I just accepted it, maybe because at that age I was also feeling very dramatic, but Edward is very dramatic. So something that really stood out to me on this reading was like the romance and the intimacy, because I distinctly remember thinking that this was romantic and like, oh, what a beautiful fantasy, like the time that they were spending together. But age has certainly changed that, because now it seems so weird the way that they interact with each other. Like, remember the scene in the like meadow where they're just like touching each other's faces? And then like early on when Edward is doing his like exposure therapy thing to try to like get used to Bella's blood, like he walks her to gym class, and outside of the gym he like strokes her face, and it's very strange. It's a very funny aspect of it reading it now. Something else, I don't know, like, is this like a vampire thing? But the love stories, they're very, very fast. It's like you meet someone and then it's like, okay, eternal love. Let's commit to that. Like this book, like the timeline is literally like 2 months. And that is including time when Edward isn't even there, time when they're not together, like huge gaps of in between when they're like actually talking to each other. But literally after hanging out twice, they're both like, yes, I'm going to love you forever. There's no one else for me. This is eternal. Which again is very dramatic and very much like 17-year-olds. But Edward has no excuse for that because he's 100. And even as a kid, I had considered that aspect of it. But what I didn't think about was that Bella and Edward are not the only people in this book who do this. These stories of how the other Cullens couples got together, it's like really bonkers if you examine it at all. Like Carlisle and Rosalie basically both took like love hostages. Like Carlisle turned Esme without knowing her at all, knowing nothing about her, and just being like, okay, you're gonna be my wife now. And then Rosalie did the same thing with Emmett. Like she picked up some unconscious dude and was like, yeah, you're my partner for life. Carlisle, please turn him into a vampire so he's stuck with me for eternity. Like how did that work out? That doesn't make any sense at all. Anyways, really the only vampire in this situation who has any viable excuse for this kind of behavior is Alice, because she can see the future. So when she meets Jasper, she already knows they're gonna be together. But like, what if Carlisle had turned Esme into a vampire, like love bombed her, and Esme like wakes up and is like, no thanks. I have a lot of questions about that. So even while these books were like a huge part of my childhood for a few years there, I definitely found on this reading that there were a lot of things I had forgotten. I had seen the movies much more recently than I had read the books, and there were a lot of details that I had forgotten about. And particularly with Alice and Jasper, I felt like that first movie, like, did not do them justice. Like in this first Twilight book, they are like the most interesting characters probably, and almost none of that played in the first movie, which I do love. The first movie, it is like iconically low budget and awkward and weird, which is fitting for this book. But yeah, like Alice has this really interesting dark past, and it's like part of the plot of the book that it's revealed that she has this connection to James from her human life. The whole like asylum thing, because apparently she could see the future as a human as well, and the kind of lingering mystery of this vampire who had taken a liking to her and saved her from James by turning her. And then Jasper. Like, I know Jasper turns out to be like a Confederate. We don't know that in this book. But his movie adaptation was so strange because Jasper, like, the only thing we know about him in this book is that he is extremely charming. Like that's his whole gift. He can control people's emotions because he is this abnormally charming person. So that's what makes Jasper interesting, is that it is very obvious that he is keeping his distance and that there is some discomfort there. But you don't feel any of the discomfort because he is not alarming in and of himself. Bella likes Jasper. It's impossible to not like Jasper. But in the movies, he is so weird. He's not charming at all. Like, the charm doesn't come in until, like, the third movie. So I had some gripes with that for sure. And this is like kind of just occurring to me now, but another thing I had an issue with that I like kept coming back to is that none of these vampires seem to have any interests or hobbies that we see. Like, Carlisle is a doctor, he is a calling, something that he's dedicating his time to, but like none of these other vampires like work or seem to be doing anything at all with their time. Like, what are they doing? What are they all doing? Like, Edward composes music on the piano, that's an interest, but other than that, what are they doing? They don't sleep. Like, how are they spending their time? Like, what does Alice have some sort of dream job? Because she's not doing it. It's certainly not their dream to go to high school, which their excuse for going to high school seems very thin to me, because like, if they don't want people to be suspicious of them, like, they're vampires, like they could live in that house and no one would know they were there. Like, they could very easily conceal themselves. I'm never gonna get the high school thing. I think you just have to take it for what it is or it'll drive you crazy. So I also wanted to talk about the fashion choices that are described in this. This is in part because of this girl on TikTok who talks a lot about how the clothes are described in this series. You know, lots of people are talking about Twilight right now. It's the Twilight Renaissance. But that is a really funny conversation that people have been having. In the scene where like Bella and Edward are going to that meadow together, they're described as like laughing about how they're wearing the same outfit basically. And they're wearing like tan sweaters with white button-ups underneath. And like, it's very hard to picture that being cute at all, but it's like not so offensive. But then when they get to the trailhead, Edward takes his sweater off and he's wearing a sleeveless white button-up, unbuttoned and open, and with his jeans. Like, the image of that is very funny. And then another thing, the prom scene at the end, Alice and Rosalie's dresses, as described, are insane. Like, Alice's dress has all of these like diamond-shaped cutouts in it. I had a hard time picturing what that would look like. But then Rosalie is apparently wearing a red dress that like plunges to her belly button and is also completely open in the back. Like, this is a high school. There are dress codes at prom. You can't wear that. But anyways, the hands down most egregious fashion moment in this book is when Bella is going to meet Edward's parents and she puts on a long khaki skirt. There's no way for that to be good. And it's like actively discussed about how Edward likes it and finds it attractive and appealing, which I feel like is like Stephenie Meyer trying to like send this message to be like, oh, modesty is actually very, very sexy, and Edward finds her long khaki skirt very hot. I mean, it's just like, it is laugh out loud funny. Also, every time that Edward sort of expresses that he is sexually attracted to Bella, it is so weird. It's so weird. He's 100 years old. Something that I was surprised by, that like my memory of it I think was different than the reality of it. People talk a lot now in like the Twilight discourse about how like explicitly Christian the books are. And I certainly remembered it like that, and I do think that comes in a lot more in the later books. But it's not really happening so much in the first Twilight book, which I thought was interesting, because I definitely associated that as like the thing that I did not notice when I was a teenager. So, I mean, as I read the other books, I'll be interested to see if that jumps out at me more, but not so much in this one. So yeah, I mean, at the time that we were in the Twilight craze, there was a lot of criticism of the books, and honestly, most of that criticism was very dumb. Like, yeah, it's kind of silly, and yeah, teenage girls sometimes like silly things, but the people who were like basing their whole personality on hating Twilight were also being silly. Like, people weren't even being remotely clever about it. Like, the discourse level was literally, oh, glitter? They glitter? Glitter's gay. Like, that was it. Like, there's a lot of legitimate things that you can criticize about Twilight. I've seen a lot of people be really funny about their critique now. But all of that back then, I mean, it was just a lazy way to hate something that teenage girls like. But yeah, final thoughts. I had fun. It felt like taking a break. It felt nostalgic, though, you know, obviously I was laughing at a lot of it. You do kind of feel like you're a kid again. It's fun. I hope I never take myself too seriously as a reader of books and a watcher of movies and TV shows. Like, not everything has to be of that caliber. It's okay to just read something because you enjoy it. And yes, you can criticize something and you can laugh at something and still enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. Yeah, so like I said, I do still have all of my copies of the original series, and I think I'm going to read all of them. I've started down the rabbit hole now. There's no stopping my fall until I finish Breaking Dawn. But I think I am drawing the line at Midnight Sun. That would require me actually spending money on this series again, and frankly, I've heard enough from the internet about how that book plays out to have my fix there. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. Bye.